Welcome to Tom and Dave's Odd Shaped Balls, a weekly look at all the things NFL and rugby. We're going to be having a chat about the Six Nations and, of course, the Super Bowl. Might as well dive straight in, I guess.
I think we should.
Yeah.
I think we should.
So, obviously, a couple of great games at the weekend. Biggest game, probably Ireland-France.
Yes.
Titanic clash.
Probably not as big as the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it depends if you're Irish and or, yeah. The game... Go on, sorry.
You say that, but straight off the bat, I watched the Irish-French game with some North Americans who kept on going on about how Irish they were, which made me come over all French. The beginning of the game, I was completely wanting an Irish victory.
Yeah.
But if there's anything that will turn you off the Irish, next to a loved one being disposed of in a car bomb, it's an American pretending to be Irish.
What part of America were they from?
Well, I said North America because they was actually Canadian.
Oh.
So they're not even really American.
Yeah, that was like when I was living over there. That was the blight of every St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, God, Jesus.
You just have like I'm called Megan. I'm definitely Irish. Or like every St. Patrick's Day parade, there's like a bus of people from like Long Island and Staten Island like flood into Manhattan. And then you'd have like, you can't arrest him. Who's going to deliver mass tomorrow? He only punched a horse. It's just a horse. Let him go. I'm Irish. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was why I felt like I needed to immediately buy a stripy T-shirt and a string of garlic. By the end of the game, I was screaming in French.
Yeah. Which is just most of French.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just angry throat noises.
But should we actually talk about the game? What a game indeed. It seemed like such a wonderful metaphor for everything that's going on in world rugby at the moment. We had this dreary couple of years where everybody was sort of money-balling it. Everybody was playing percentages and there was no flair. There was no breaking of the game line whatsoever. And suddenly we've got this revolution of these incredible French players. We've got Finn Russell, we've got Marcus Smith, and this new dawn of expressive, exciting rugby. And I know people like to say that Ireland have turned a corner as well, but they are still percentage rugby. They're so organised, they're so structured. And it was a great arm wrestle between those styles. And I'm going to say, I've got a bias. I don't like game managers. Yeah. I don't watch sport to watch game managers. I don't watch sport to see a safe pair of hands.
Yeah.
I watch sport to see people being gladiators, trying to do something incredible.
Yeah.
And the French did that and they won. So I think the right team win.
Yeah, and I know what you mean.
End of case.
Now walk out of the courtroom to rapturous applause. No, it does. It feels like a moral victory. Every time France win playing like that, it feels like a moral victory for the sport. My only worry with them is if they're peaking a bit too early. I mean, you've seen this with Ireland did it before the 2019 World Cup. New Zealand have done it before a number of World Cups where they're playing scintillating rugby. Everyone's hearts and minds are like, we want this team to win. And then for whatever reason, 12 months down the line, another team figures them out and they don't get the big win in the big tournament.
But they're hardly a finished product, though, are they? Because they're not structured, they're not disciplined, so they've got a lot to improve on. I don't think anybody's watching that game and go, "Oh, that is a perfect display." So I think they've got plenty to go. They're further down the line than certainly England, who probably should have started rebuilding straight after the last World Cup. But
yeah, well, I think you raise a good point with the philosophy thing, because I think when teams get figured out, it's usually because they've got a structure, they've got a pattern, they've got a set way of playing, and other teams can unlock that. Other teams can build for that and plan for it and defend against it. I think you're right. When it's France and it's a philosophical way you want to play, that can be harder to mitigate for, because it's like, well, they're just superstar athletes with this incredible mentality and appreciation of how rugby gets played, who are now adding some discipline and some structure to what's always been there.
Which I'm sure is the influence of their defence coach, the Wigan guy that used to
Sean Edwards.
Sean Edwards, of course, yeah.
As a lad from Leeds, I think any time a Northerner does well in international rugby, there's always a little A little bit of pride.
Does seem. I mean, it feels hard to imagine this stoical monosyllabic man from Wigan blending in Paris.
Yeah.
But it's kind of beautiful, isn't it?
Two croissants! Here! I'll have 2 beers!
I'll have one of those French pastries you do.
Yeah. Have you not got any gravy with that?
It's like a donut, but it's too cowardly to meet at end.
I haven't got enough about it. Well, have you heard him speak French?
No, I imagine it's something to touch yourself to.
It's pretty. So his actual French vocabulary is not bad. It's pretty good, but his accent, he's made no effort. So it's like,
bonjour.
Yeah, maintenant, vous, smash that cunt. Right, jouez, très hard. All right, fiku, you bastard, get in line. It's amazing. But the players love him because apparently what it forces him to do is because he can't speak much French. He only uses like 4 or 5 words in training.
Right.
So they don't have these long philosophical conversations about structure and pattern. And it's like, you up, hit him. Don't stand too far from him. Batter that one.
I think you need more of it. I mean, talking about the structure being figured out, I mean, that was really the problem I thought with England. I definitely owned the Owen Farrell years because they always wanted to start in exactly the same way. Wanted to force a line out and then score a try early doors. They were so particular that Jamie George would stand off the pitch before it went out, that they were forcing a line out in that first play from the kickoff.
Yeah.
And then Wales sort of cracked the code. And then England went, oh, we're taking our toy away now.
Yeah.
What are we going to do now? Because it's like if you play me at chess, I know a checkmate in 3 moves, but I know no other chess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you stop that checkmate in 3 move, either because you know what I'm doing or by accident, I have nothing else.
Yeah, and then you'd see, and Owen Farrell typified this like sense of like, well, that's not fair.
Yes, yeah.
You can't take my toy.
Yeah,
it's my toy.
yeah, that really.
Yeah,
gets very upset, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right with the French mentality because like what they have added, and Sean Edwards is a big part of it. But what you hear coming out of that camp is that actually Rafael Ibanez is a big emotional part of what's made that team tougher. His influence, like bringing that sort of Wasps winning mentality, is what's allowed the French players to, I guess, import some of that anglicised grit or practicality, let's say, and translate that into a Gallic. You know, we can still do this in a fun way. We can still do this in a way that makes us happy. That makes us feel like we're still France.
Yes, and they've got to keep on because you don't want them changing, do you?
No.
I mean, any sports team throughout history that's won a lot of things has acquired glory hunters, and whether it be Manchester United in the 90s or the rise of even England in the early 2000s with Johnny Wilkinson and stuff, and you start seeing more jerseys around town. This has not happened for Saracens because they're dull.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much you win if the games will literally put you in a coma.
Yeah.
It's so France, please don't go change.
No. It's like Saracens always remind me of that Mitchell and Webb sketch with the German soldiers on the barricades and like, are we the baddies? We dress in black. Everyone hates us. Are we the? We've got a skull and if Saracens peeled their badge back and there was a skull and crossbones underneath it.
Saracens aren't charismatic enough to be Nazis.
Say what you will. Say what you will about the SS.
Yeah.
They can't pull off a jackboot.
There isn't one member of the Nazi party who is as poorly dressed as Owen Farrell.
Or as dull at a dinner party.
Yeah, that's right.
You get a lot more value out of Goebbels. At least he had some ideas.
Come on, Owen. Give me something to bounce off. Just a little bit of anti-Semitism.
Someone to bounce off. How about my forehead? Okay, Owen. Good. All right. Is it winding up? Last bit of Beaujolais finished, is it? Come on.
Just a little bit more about the actual game. I don't think Ireland missed Sexton. I don't think it had anything to do with the result.
Interesting. Tell me more.
Well, I just don't feel that. I mean, he's a great player, but I didn't think the thing that they missed was some sort of dynamism in the midfield. I mean, I am saying that they lack flair, but I don't think Sexton's a controller, isn't he? And sometimes, I mean, Ireland do tend to go as his emotional boiling point goes. And if he starts to lose his cool, then the whole sort of the beautiful structure that we've talked about, the fact that they are the most organised, the most structured side in world rugby, falls apart. And they didn't have that pressure valve there. So I'm not saying he's not better. He is a great player, but I don't think it was him missing him that
I think you used the right word there. I think he's the emotional, more than the tactician, he's the emotional heartbeat of that team. And I think maybe something it actually reveals is other players not being as ready or as willing to step up into that role. So you saw like James Ryan when they had that decision late to go for the corner or 3 points. You feel like if Johnny Sexton was on the pitch, whatever decision he made, it would have made it like that. It would have been like, we're doing this, get behind it, this is what we're doing. You saw James Ryan was looking round at Joey Carberry, he was looking round at Peter Amani, he was sort of like asking Ian Henderson and sort of asking a few other senior people, what do you think? And you wonder if in moments like that, you want someone on the pitch who's just going to be like, lads, we're doing this, right or wrong, get after it, get behind me, we're doing it. Maybe that's what it gives them more than...
No. Nothing instills confidence in the red mist of battle of, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, just, lads, take five. Take five now. I'll have a quick chat.
If you could all put your answers on a little piece of paper and we'll put it in a hat.
Yeah, a wee hat. We'll have it in a hat. And Ian, what do you reckon? We'll come out after. Yeah, no. When the axes are flying, that's not what you want to hear.
No.
So I agree. I think he's emotional.
That's how you write a sitcom.
Yeah.
It's not how you take a castle on the top of a hill.
Well, the castle on top of a hill would be a good name for a sitcom. Coming this winter on RTE, James Ryan takes the castle. I think Sexton's emotional impact, but again, I feel like they haven't moved on from that, and I think it's something that England is struggling with Owen Farrell as well. Is like when you give someone that much control over a team, and when they're not there, their absence is...
Well, I don't think England have really beat Owen Farrell. I think the one that they haven't ever been able to work out a contingency for is Manu Tuilalangi, because they've got all these other... they've tried some ridiculous... They quoted it during the game, that they've had something like 32 centre partnerships since the World Cup final, which is just mental, and not... I don't think one of them, apart from Manu Tuilalangi, is a game line passer, somebody who actually breaks the game line. I mean, you can't find any footage of Owen Farrell ever breaking the game line. He because he's a fly half at heart. He's not, I mean, he's a big lump of a guy, but he doesn't really ever beat anybody for speed. Ever beat anybody for speed. And rarely beats anybody for power. So he's just a second fly half. And Slade is kind of in that mould as well, although he's got a little bit faster of foot. And they just, despite the fact that they've constantly had to live without Manu, they still don't have a plan, which is weird. If he was like, a sort of, man of steel that was never injured and constantly going, I mean, it's great, we win all the time because of Manu, but fuck me, if he goes down, we're fucked. Well, I don't know. But they've had to learn to live without him, and yet they still don't have a plan to how to live without him.
But I think the problem they've got is because he's you will go 50 years and not find somebody with the physical attributes of Manu Tuilalangi. You can do it at international level. So I think it is kind of like that Moneyball thing of like you can't replace that individual. That just doesn't exist. So I think when he's not in the team, they have to play completely differently. And I think that is what's been really, really hard. You go from this structure where you're going to play probably with a 1-3-3-1 or whatever it is in the middle of the park, where you've got Kyle Sinclair, Ellis Genge maybe working at the top of a pod.
I'm new to podcasting, but I think this banging on the table is probably annoying.
Also measuring out the pitch.
Oh, well done.
With my with my tiny hands. But I think that if you're going to play that kind of structure, that your two fly half thing works. I think when you've got a big lad in midfield who can break any tackle in world rugby,
Yeah, it's
you're
what
going to play
Andre
a bit differently.
Esterhausen does at Harlequins, and I think when you do have, a diminutive fly half like George Ford or Marcus Smith, having a monster outside him does help. Because I like Marchant a lot, but he's not a man mounting, is he?
No, but I mean, obviously Esterhausen's played that role for Quins and done a fantastic job. But again, he's a guy with like a pretty unique physical skill set, and I think when he goes down, Quins find it pretty hard to replace someone like that.
Yeah. It's hard to coach size, isn't it?
Yeah. Like
Right, this week in training, what we're going to do is make all of you bigger.
Steve Hansen said that about the All Blacks. He got asked about what was one of the keys to their success, and he sort of gave a pretty philosophical answer about culture of rugby, and he's like, oh, yeah, but also we just have a lot of big blokes. We grow up outside, mate. Some big boys.
Yeah, I think I heard him say something along the lines of, well, skills are all right, but 9 out of 10 times a big guy beats a small guy.
Yeah.
It's kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of always been the problem. I mean, George Ford, no one, maybe bar Finn Russell, reads the game better than George Ford, but you always have to put another player next to him.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you've got a huge hole in your defence. So you normally put the hooker behind him so that, he doesn't just get run over 9 out of 10 plays. So you really, you're hampering yourself. But, the sort of, I mean, no one ever clattered people in the same way as Johnny Wilkinson, but you got that damn big a role where a fly half and a physical presence is pretty rare, and especially that, and when they do tend to be that Johnny Wilkinson damn bigger type, then they don't tend to have that maverick magician quality of a Marcus Smith.
Yeah.
You can't be all things to all men, I suppose.
Yeah, and they also don't tend to be as durable as you want someone to be to give them the keys to the team.
Yeah. Does Bigger struggled with injury? I
mean, he's sort of like...
don't really care about Welsh people.
I'm sure the feeling's mutual, David. Not
true. I said it for a fact.
I mean, they saw it. You saw it at the weekend. Like he was on one leg for a lot of that game. He's one of those guys. I think is in and out, more so than someone like Marks. I think will be in his grip. It's kind of similar to NFL quarterbacks, isn't it? Like Josh Allen's or Joe Burrow's having to learn to slide because.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mystery, isn't it? I mean, how did Eli Manning never get hurt?
Yeah.
A man who looked like he was allergic to the weight room. Yeah. And you say, well, what do you do to become less injury prone? Well, become stronger, build a bigger chassis to, and yet Manu Tuilagipi can get injured in a team talk.
Yeah.
And Eli Manning didn't get. He looks like Mr. Muscle.
Yeah.
And he got hit by defensive ends. And he was behind a bad offensive line as well. For years. He's getting smashed left, right and centre by 250-pound men. Yeah. And he just gets up with that look on his face going, why would you do that to me? It's not nice. And then he just never get injured.
Yeah.
And then... Wilkinson fell apart towards the end of his career, and he was injured every 5 minutes. And
yeah, I wonder if his thing was more psychological though, because I feel like after he talked about that a little bit after the World Cup final. He was 24 when he won that game, obviously, and then he'd done what he'd set his whole career up to do at 24.
Yeah, well, he could have done it again.
Could have done it. I mean, almost did.
Come on,
didn't he? 4 years later, Mark Cueto, eyelash and touch.
Yeah.
But
actually, the touchline was in the wrong place.
Yeah, if you ask Mark, he'll tell you. But yeah, I think he psychologically was like, I've done the big thing I needed to do, and then everything that was, hurting my body or not quite right just fell apart. And then I think he said it took him 6-7 years to get back, and it was basically when he went to Toulon, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was a different man when he went to Toulon. Talking about, again, a game manager who found flair in the end of his... And people say that about the last season of Tom Brady, that he was a far more exciting player to watch in that last season than he was in the sort of previous 10.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like playing with house money. And
yeah. I did feel sorry for him that Adam Schefter...
I beg your pardon, who? You felt sorry for Tom Brady.
I did at the end because Adam Schefter took away his retirement announcement. I don't know if like the ESPN guys tweeted like, "I've heard he's going to retire."
Right.
And then obviously, it's like the most decorated player in the history of the NFL, and he didn't even get to announce that he was going out on his own terms.
I mean, people said that I heard he's going to retire after many seasons, and then it didn't come to be true. I don't think anybody believed it until he said it. And many people, including myself, didn't believe it either when he said it.
Yeah.
Then one day later, he said, "Never say never."
Yeah, you do wonder if the Bucs signed a good receiver in the off season or something, you get a knock on the door, or if like a check mysteriously wafts into his front living room.
I don't think money's the motivating force. Do you think he might have enough money?
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't think someone who's played 20 years in the NFL, supermodel wife, just a few more coins. We could really do with an extension, love. I don't know if I'm going to have to play one more year. This conservatory.
One last big fight.
Yeah.
Just for the purse. For the purse. I've been waiting for the big purse my whole life.
Exactly. This magnet kitchen's not going to pay for itself.
Well, he's got a catering book out, so it did pay for itself.
I didn't know that. Is that
he has got a cookbook, yeah, and it's like $100. It's like $100 a blow.
Great.
Probably not a blow.
That's his third business. Say what you will about Tom Brady, he'll do anything for money. Let me show you how pliable I am.
Get on his knees for Uncle Sam.
Yeah. How bendy are you? Let me show you. I'll show you how bendy I am. Should we have a quick chat about Wales, Scotland?
Yes, if we must.
Because that was an interesting one. That they've beaten England, and I wonder if it just shows the arrogance of English fans that we think it's some sort of drop off for Scotland to lose to Wales after beating England. But it did seem like they were on a roll, or like they might have some genuine momentum behind them.
And Wales did look like an absolute shower of shit against Ireland. But it was ever thus with Scotland that we can I say we, after criticising Americans for saying Irish. I was born in Scotland. But I was very split down the middle because both my parents were English. Normally, I would support Scotland because of being the underdog. And yet in England, against England, they weren't the underdog. And so I was very split down the middle. But to get over that big emotional battle, and then just next week not to really show up, not to fight. I mean, it's so trite for two people who aren't professional sportsmen to say that professional sportsmen didn't try, and I'm not suggesting for a second they didn't try. I'm just suggesting that they didn't get the emotional intensity that they on paper they should. If you went down the 15, you'd pick the Scotland player over the Welsh player nearly every single
in that game,
on the pitch, and yet they just didn't find, like, they were sapped by the emotional turmoil that relationship between Scotland and England hangs over them. That they couldn't just put away what should have been the lesser side,
which is what you looked at that Scotland side and thought, they might have got over that now, because that's been you're right, that's been every Scotland team's sort of thing, has been, we just need to beat England. If we beat England, it's been salvaged a championship.
And yet they can also do it against France, the old friend, the old alliance.
Yeah.
But they've beaten France the last 2 years.
Yeah.
When France are meant to be the best team in the world. And Wales, who somebody referred to Welsh rugby is like an armadillo. It shouldn't be able to fly. But somehow,
it's Joe Lydon.
It was really an amazing comment.
Especially because armadillos don't fly.
Yeah.
We've got to stop giving these ex-Wigan rugby league players positions of prominence. You just imagine in a press conference, armadillos don't fly. It's like an armadillo. Is it, Joe? Are you sure? You ever seen an armadillo, Joe? No, it's like one of them big stripy things. You've seen them. Down the pier, you ride them. Go back at armadillo. No, Joe.
It's just they always are more than the sum total of their parts, and I wish Scotland would find out how to do that.
Yeah, I feel like for just for international rugby in general and just the sport as a whole, you want more teams that are genuinely competitive in more games.
Yes.
It's like you want more teams that can get to a World Cup semi-final and genuinely think this could go either way.
Yeah.
And I was actually hoping, because I'm sort of, I think, got the similar vibe to a lot of England fans at the minute, where I don't really feel emotionally invested in this England team, particularly. Like, there's been some England teams over the years where I've really felt like they're representing what English fans want to see out of this team. And at the minute, it feels hard. I think Eddie Jones has maybe overstayed his welcome in terms of the goodwill of people and playing this constant curmudgeon underdog with developing thing. I just don't think it helps anything. So I think I was quite keen to see Scotland kick on and actually develop into a competitive side that isn't psyched to beat England, but is actually like, we have our own ambitions.
Yeah, and you're right about Eddie Jones. It's become very tiresome, hasn't it? That he will just move the goalposts whenever you'd say 18 months ago, you guys are a very boring side. I guess I don't think the audience care as long as they win. And then a year later, you go, oh, we keep on losing, mate. You go, well, we're building something, mate. We're building a new, exciting way to play. You're either one or the other. You're either money-balling it for victories, regardless how boring you are, or you're an exciting, cavalier team. You can't be both, depending on the results on that day. And you're right. I think he has worn out his goodwill, but I'm excited for these new guys. I'm biased because of my roots with Harlequins, but to see Marcus Smith and Dunbran and Merchant come through, and Liners looks like he's knocking on the door. So I think there's a lot of very exciting young players, and some of them aren't even playing for Harlequins.
Other
Rafi Quirk is the only one I can think of. I'm sure there are others.
Like Rafi Quirk, Harry Randall, Freddie Steward's been excellent.
It's just been amazing. I mean, just like it's just sort of like become a world-class test animal overnight.
Yeah,
just like,
isn't that funny how some lads come into international rugby and it's like, you look like you're made for this.
Yeah.
You just look like
there's
you've been
no
doing this your whole
growing
life.
pains, no learning the ropes. Just this is what I was meant to do.
Yeah, I mean, like, because was he his debut against South Africa or his second game maybe against South Africa in the autumn?
Yeah, I think his first game was. I think he played in all three, didn't he? He played Tonga, Australia, South Africa.
It was like,
but nevertheless,
he's just like Jeremy Renner in the Hurt Locker, just diffusing bombs after bomb after bomb. He's just unbelievable because it wasn't like they didn't try him. I just peppered him up there, and he was just looked like he'd been made for it. So I think I agree. There's maybe a new generation come through. I feel like the Saracens cloud is just something that lingers over that squad. It really annoyed me actually when Eddie Jones gave an interview and he said, I don't think I appreciated how much the relegation was going to affect those blokes. Like, what do you mean?
It's like, it was weird, wasn't it? Because everybody, when they got relegated, everybody said, actually, this is going to be good for England because they've been suffering with burnout, so it's nice for them to have a bit of a rest. And then everybody was surprised, going, well, we had no idea, but it turns out if you don't play rugby very often, you stop being very good at rugby. I mean, can you imagine a comedian turning up at a massive kick going, the really good thing about this is I haven't kicked for weeks, so I'm fresh.
Like, who's doing your surgery? Oh, it's Dr. Smith. Don't worry, they haven't operated for years. It's been
he's really fresh.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous.
I think those Saracen boys were absolute warriors for years, but
well, I was thinking
times change.
It was the arrogance that, in a good way, that the arrogance they carried from winning so much at domestic level, I think, carried over into the international team, and they were the core of that mentality that 2016 to 2019 team had.
Yeah.
And I think at the moment they're looking for a new identity, aren't they? And I thought Scotland had found theirs with this sort of Finn Russell, Stuart Hogg, Ali Price, who all seem to see the key decision makers all see the game the same way. It's
a generational players, isn't it? I mean, if they don't make the most of them, you're not going to get another Finn Russell. Talking about being able to replace your Manitou, you're not going to be able to replace Finn Russell, so you better fucking win something now.
Yeah.
But I mean, it'd be so fucking Scottish to beat France in the next round and then lose to Italy. It would be. I mean,
yeah.
Perfectly feasible.
I mean, should we talk about Italy? Because
I mean, it was good to get to nil 'em, to be the first to nil 'em. But Italy could have got points. They had plenty of opportunities to kick for goal, and England have beaten them 43 and 46 many times. But they chose to go for the corner, which is the courageous thing to do. Then England stood up and stopped them going over. You can't really. I mean, it's sloppy perform. It was how can a nilling
Be a sloppy, yeah.
a five tried to nil performance still be sloppy,
Yeah.
and yet it kind of was, which shows more to where Italy is than to where England is.
Yeah, and also I just think that the level of, I mean, in the press they always say we respect them, but it's got to be hard to like actually in that week actually be like, oh, worried about Italy.
Well, I mean, I did text you during the game saying that England are bringing on a ginger person. I don't think they do.
Ultimate level of disrespect.
Well,
He's never going to play again. He's just there for that game.
such a horrible thing to do to Italy.
Yeah. Bringing on an aggressively ginger second row, was he?
No, he was playing at 6, I think.
6.
He'd come on for
Just an aggressively ginger mutant just to come off the bench.
Chisholm, first ever. It was his debut, wasn't it?
Yeah, good for him.
Good for him.
Good for him. Well done. Well done, Chizzo.
I mean, look what he's achieved despite.
Despite everything.
Yeah.
All the limitations put on him. Genetic limitations he faces.
For the 6'4" perfect athlete
Yeah.
with ginger hair.
That's like one of those would you rathers. Would you rather be
Athletic, perfect specimen. And ginger.
or
Blonde.
yeah.
But never a professional
Yeah.
athlete.
Slightly pear-shaped, blonde. Yeah. Yeah, there isn't much to say really about those Italy games. I think maybe it's something we can come back to in a future episode about just like what Italy's place is in the championship, because you wonder, you know, I would love to see the IRB or World Rugby as it is now just invest really heavily in Italy, maybe like Samoa, Tonga, and America, and just try and, if you're going to pick like 3 teams in World Rugby, just to lift the standard and be like, these teams need to be competitive. It's not about generating an opportunity for like Georgia to come in or for Canada to come in. It's like, no, just pick the 3 or 4.
Well, I think a second tier to have some more money and exposure, you know, for the second tier to be on a terrestrial side, that would be. I mean, Romania used to be a very good side. You know, we used to play Romania in every autumn internationals, and it. I mean, it got silly towards the end. There was some 17, I think, when.
It was even a 100-pointer, I think, at one stage.
Maybe. I mean, it was Jason Robinson's debut, and he scored 4 tries against Romania. So it did get silly towards the end. But there was a time when Romania looked like they were going to be the 6th member of the Six Nations. And if you do, you know, again, if you don't put people on television, if you don't give them money, if you don't give them, so if there was a second tier that got exposure and was on television and we watched it, and you know, and then playing for those sides, you know. Dare I say it, Dan Luger may have played for his native Croatia rather than England. Probably not.
Potentially stretching the point.
Yeah.
But I think professionalism has left so many of those teams behind. Like, I think in the 90s, the world...
Canada.
Yeah, Canada is another great example. I think like in the early 90s, because I remember the World Cup in 1991, I was like 5 or 6, 7. And one of the games was at our Otley Rugby Club where I grew up, and it was like USA, Italy.
Right.
And it was like good, like,
Yeah.
and it wasn't that the standard wasn't that different to the rest of the big nations. Now I think that is definitely because the other nations have improved so much under professionalism.
Yeah.
It's like a compounding effect. Every year you get more money, more investment. You look at more details of the game. The gap just gets wider and wider and wider. And I think Scotland suffered from that for a long time. And I think that's why, you know, their investment plan has worked really well for them. I would just love to see someone try and do something similar with a few of these tier 2 nations. Because otherwise, what's the point? What's the point in everyone just being like, that's a win at the weekend for us, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, there have been shocks. So there's been some South American sides, wasn't it? Was it Chile that took a... There's been a couple of big scalps,
Right.
but they're few and far between.
Yeah.
And... yeah, you're absolutely right. But the more though that the top level develop, it is going to be harder for the second. I don't know how we any given Sunday World Rugby, because you know we're not going to have a draft.
No, No, you're not gonna have a draft, but I think you could just say like, right, we've been quite single-minded about it. You're gonna get a load of money. You're gonna get a load of money. You're gonna get a load of money. It's gonna be used in these ways, because they don't have their own revenue model like the RFU does or the IRFU, Welsh RFU does to like generate their own funds. But do you think England learned anything from the Italy game?
I think it's just more time in the saddle for Marcus Smith and the new combinations and them growing in confidence and ready for more of the same. I think we'll see coming up against Wales.
Yeah.
Are Wales the real deal?
Oof.
Are Wales the team that they played against Scotland?
Well, you mentioned riding emotional waves from sort of the Scotland team maybe peaked playing England and came into a dip. You would think Wales are going to be riding high going into that game.
Yeah. And England have been able to lose against Wales regardless of Wales' form elsewhere for the last decade.
Yeah.
So.
And there's rumours as well, like Jonathan Davis might be back in that team. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because how just results dictate narratives in sports, and they can be like very close, and then the narrative gets very far apart. But like all of a sudden, if Wales bring in a few of these real seasoned warriors, get to come back into the Wales team, and they do okay in the next 3 games, their narrative of this championship is going to be completely different to what it looked like a week ago.
It is amazing because, you even had Sam Warburton sort of like saying, I can't see them not coming 5th. And now we're talking about them like, what a difference one game makes.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Which is why the Six Nations is great, because outside of the Italy fixtures, at the moment it's hyper competitive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's the highest aggregate rankings those teams have ever had in the sort of world rankings.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. Which shows how tough it is at the top. Speaking of the importance of one game, obviously NFL season just came to a close.
Yes.
With the Super Bowl. What did you make of the game?
Loved it. Went a bit flat in the middle, didn't it? I have a huge love for Odell Beckham. I was so excited that he, as a Giants fan, I hated the fact that Dave Gettleman traded him away. I was so pleased that he found a new home and scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Then his knee blew out, and then after that, the Rams looked like they lost ideas. They didn't know like the one. He wasn't exactly then. He's never been their number one receiver. Always Cooper Kupp has been that, but they really did look like they went flat. And Cincinnati Bengals are just the fairy tale of fairy tales, aren't they? And what's so interesting with American football, with the every given Sunday, the fact that they've got a draft, the fact that they've got a salary cap, and everybody's meant to have the same resources, that you still manage to have pile-on teams. So in the NBA and in soccer, if you get a Russian oligarchy comes in and buys Chelsea, and then they buy all the top players in the world like they did in the late 90s, and now everybody's going for that model of the foreign money just buying players. And you can't do that in the NFL, and yet the Rams managed to build an all-star Globetrotters team of great players impossible not to love.
Yeah.
Donald,
Von Miller.
Well, and here's the thing: the two heartbeats of the Cooper Kupp and Donald, the only two that were drafted.
Yeah.
Everybody else, from the quarterback to Von Miller, everyone to Odell Beckham, they're all trades.
Yep.
But the two people who the MVP was between Donald and Cooper Kupp, and it's probably only not Donald because they probably got their votes in before the final play of the game.
Yeah, and he iced that game.
Yeah.
And you hear like Sean McVay called that on the sideline.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's like, Aaron's going to ice this for us. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. And that is such an admirable quality, I think, in any sports person, where like you are expected to deliver in a moment, and you do.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of pressure on you, and everyone's like, this is why you get paid. It all comes down to this. Yeah. And then you just deliver the thing that everyone needs you to, despite the fact that everyone knows you're being asked to.
And the opposition knows that you're about to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sort of like when they're evaluating wingers, I mean, this is going way back, talking about the difference between when the 2003 World Cup winning England side, you've got your Ben Cohen in the sort of almost Jonah Lumu model of you know what he's going to do, but best of luck trying to stop him. And then on the other wing, you've got your Jason Robinson of, you have no idea what he's going to do. If you could get hold of him, you could stop him very easily, but best of luck trying to get hold of him. And those different types of attack, and quite often if, people, the fact that people know your style, your gameplay, they know which foot you lift off, and he still can't
Still
stop
does it.
that.
Yeah. I remember doing a because Jason Robinson's from Leeds, and we were doing a skills clinic. Yeah, I know. It's always podcasts. It's just lionising Northerners.
I'm going to do another podcast about books, so I don't have to talk about quite as many Northerners.
Yeah. No chance of books and Northerners being mentioned in the same sentence. But we did like it was like a skills clinicy thing, and he said to this like 16-year-old lad who's one of the guys who we were training with, like, he wants to try and tackle him, and he was like, all right, I'm going to go off my left foot in this like 5-meter area. Told the kid what he was going to do. And then in this like little 5-meter challenge, like bang, 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 gone. It's up close and personal. It was like a magic trick.
Yeah.
It was so impressive. But I think you're right. I think when you have guys like Aaron Donald, the guys like Von Miller, Cooper Kupp, where they have this skill set that is so dominant and they're performing at such a high level, it has become impossible for people to stop them, defend them.
And familiarity breeds contempt. You almost you expect them to do it every week. You know, you expect Cooper Kupp to get you 3 touchdown grabs in the end zone, and what he was drafted in 2016,
something like that. Yeah.
So they're great. I mean, do you think Donald's going to retire?
I don't think so. Do you?
No, I don't.
No.
But there seems to be a lot of talk about it, doesn't there?
Yeah. But I mean, you wonder if like you're going to hear things eventually, like how badly his body's beat up and stuff, and you don't know how he's been held together, and
I feel like that team has a very small window.
Yeah.
It only needs 1 or 2 of them to retire, and everybody else will run for the hills because they've got no draft picks for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
They've got nothing. They've mortgaged everything, so they've got to do it. If I think that they're going to get the band back together to try it again.
Yeah.
One Super Bowl almost doesn't feel enough for what they've built.
Well, I think it's interesting, I reckon, because the Patriots are such a massive outlier in terms of what is possible in the NFL. Most teams, it's so hard to get back to one.
Yeah.
So hard. Yeah. Like, Aaron Rodgers has been to one, and he won it. And Green Bay have had a lot of like 12 and 13 win seasons. And he's never managed to get... Drew Brees only won one.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning won one, and then like basically his defense won him another one.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of logic in the LA organization saying like, we just need to get one on the board. To reinvigorate football in Los Angeles, to validate what we've built, to validate how we want to play the game, to attract people in the future. We need to get one, and then we'll figure out what's next after that. Because you're right, the next 5 years they're fucked.
Yeah.
Draft-wise.
Yeah. Well, and on the other side, you've got completely different sort of sets of scenarios, because you've got Cincinnati, who are not the perfect team, not the full all-stars. There's so much wrong there, but they've just got these 2 guys on their rocket contract. That's not what I mean, is it? Rookie contract. Oh, yeah.
I'd love to see a rocket contract.
I want my rocket contract.
That sounds like Tom Brady's 4th porno. Call back.
Well done. Who's a good boy? So they've got those 2 guys on their rookie contract. They're not costing them any money. They can if their offensive line could just not be absolute horseshit. It doesn't have to become the strength of the team. Just not be an utter revolving door. Because if they let that continue, Joe Burrow is going to have a very short, not just career, but life.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not just endangering my ability to earn, you're endangering my ability to have grandchildren.
Yes.
Yeah.
If they can build around them, they've got a decade of, but if.
Yeah, because you wonder, because their front office is terrible.
Historically speaking, yeah.
Like, they still don't have an indoor practice facility.
No.
It's like they don't, just like every other team has
they
these.
Had to go and ask the local university if they could practice, because they didn't.
Yeah. And there's because there was a big joke on Twitter during the game, because I think they had a live broadcast in the Bengals stadium.
Right.
and the owner of the Bengals obviously was at SoFi watching the game live, and they kept putting these memes together of like, why are all the lights on back at the stadium? Who's paying for that? Is that us? I'm not paying for it. I'm here. I don't want to.
Right.
And I think that if Joe Burrow is going to win, he's going to win in the face of a horrendous uphill battle organizationally, because they're not going to go out. It doesn't feel like they're going to go out and invest on his behalf and make the right moves on his behalf, and they're just going to try and be like, well, we'll see how we go.
Oh, you'd hope they'd make the most of it, wouldn't you?
But I'll give you, I think the parallel example maybe, because Chase and him have this amazing connection.
Yes.
So did Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson.
Yes.
In Detroit.
Yeah.
And the Lions did nothing for a decade.
Yeah.
And they just let Matt Stafford and Calvin Johnson win 7 games, 9 games. They occasionally those two would dig them out of holes constantly. And I think Matt Stafford had never been to the playoffs, or maybe played one playoff game before the Rams. So that's the alternative. The alternative is that kind of scenario.
Well, it's pretty tragic. It's amazing how the different organisations, because the resources are meant to be divvied up so equally in the NFL, and yet you have these organisations that are just run like apps, like you wouldn't run a corner shop as bad as, your local Starbucks has got better managers than this place, and the difference between sort of like, who would you consider the gold standard? Probably Pittsburgh, as just always managing to sort of do things the right way.
Yeah, Pittsburgh Patriots.
Yeah. And then you've got your Detroits who just don't seem to be able to do anything. They couldn't even...
because all those teams, they're all getting the same central money.
Yeah.
They're all getting a TV deal. They're all getting the revenue share from the league, obviously. But your big market teams have way more potential to supplement revenue outside of...
Yeah.
And they can't spend it on players directly, but they can buy indoor practices. You can get some umbrellas. Like if you're LA or New York, you can afford some umbrellas for players in a way that Cincinnati...
One of the things you don't need in LA.
Yeah. For Cooper Kupp, maybe. And
protect his lovely hair.
His lovely hair and his lovely little face.
His little beard.
Yeah, it's an interesting little beard he's got, isn't it? I feel like the more confident he was getting, the more manly that beard was getting. I feel like he was like a facial Samson.
No.
Yeah, which was my nickname in high school. I think...
Makes you think I'm going to not be calling you anything than Posh Ham.
Yep. I think Posh Ham sums me up quite nicely. I think...
So if you had to pick one team to be back...
Out of those two, I would pick the Rams.
Yeah, it's hard to envision it not being.
Because I think everything that went right for Cincinnati this year...
Yeah.
Is you've won a few games there. Where Luck has played a role. I don't think people saw them coming, and it's hard in terms of getting a film on somebody because they were so poor. There's nothing to suggest in his rookie season that he'd be capable of doing some of the things he's done this year. Joe Burrow probably felt he did.
Yeah.
But on tape, you wouldn't have that evidence.
Yeah.
So I feel like to replicate that again with how badly the organizations run, the revolving door of the offensive line, the fact that there'll be a year of tape and just respect. People will be like, no, we need to take Chase away from him. We definitely, Joe Burrow's a problem. Whereas I agree with what you were saying earlier. I think the Rams have built to, if not win the next 2 years, to have had like this year, give it a good crack.
Yeah, they've got 2 more years, I think, of being dominant. Unless they only need one dominator for. If Donald comes out and retires and they can't rebuild Beckham's knee and Miller decides that he's not going to try and be that defense all on his own, then they are truly up shit creek because they're not going to be able to replace anybody because they don't have any draft picks because they've mortgaged them all away.
And then it could be a really strange, just like decline, just like because that.
I tell you what, for this podcast, I am quite excited. Because we've started it at the end of the NFL season, so it means that for the next, couple of months we can discuss the draft without either of us really watching any college football. So
which is a plus.
Look forward to us regurgitating other people's opinions.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's what last hour's been, to be honest. But when I was living out there, I didn't appreciate until I was watching a lot of it just how different college football is. It's almost like a different sport.
Yeah, it's like rugby league.
It is. It's exactly that. It's like rugby league to rugby union. Like different size pitches, like rule changes. Like
it's much simpler a game.
Yeah.
Because college players smaller brains. Rugby
just
league,
science.
Rugby league for northerners, smaller brains.
You've been waiting to get that. You're like, what? How can I shit on the north? Tom's gone big with some northern stories. I want to get a few northern jabs in, but no, it's fair. Why do you think I left? Like, I used to get bullied all the time at school for being posh, and I'd be like, I'm not
being
posh.
able to spell your name.
Well, that was it. I'm like, I'm not posh. I'm just coherent. That's not that's not the same thing. Being able to spell under pressure.
Oh, I can't do that.
Yeah, but I think the draft's going to be really interesting for all the reasons you just mentioned. And I think the one thing I feel really sorry for some of the poorer teams in the NFL, some of the teams not in big markets, is every owner, GM, is going to be like, well, Cincinnati did it.
Yeah.
Cincinnati did it. They didn't spend any money. Cincinnati did it. And like every coach must be like, oh, for fuck's sake. I'm just going to hear that for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until it's proven that Joe Burrow, needs legs to walk on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe should have spent some money on an offensive line at some point.
Yeah, that's definitely true. He's not going to last behind that. So.
Do you think who else could be coming back to the Super Bowl? I think Chiefs and Bills, I don't see going anywhere.
Yeah, they're going to be dominant next year as well, I imagine. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be playing for the...
I was just going to ask that. Is Aaron Rodgers staying with the Packers? Because he sort of gave a pretty strong indication that if he's not leaving, he wants some pretty significant changes.
Yeah. And yet, they had a great year. What's wrong with him? What is wrong with him?
Well, also, like, them losing to San Francisco wasn't like he played amazingly and the team let him down.
No.
Like, he had some...
The whole team didn't show up.
Yeah. And he had some, like, bonehead, missing open throws to convert third downs, like, not taking check down reads. I mean, talking like I've ever thrown a football in my life. But, like, it wasn't stuff where you would say... Aaron's putting the team on his back and people just aren't stepping up for him.
No, not this year. Last year, but not this year. No,
yeah.
No. He's such a character change. Because I remember when he won this first Super Bowl, his only Super Bowl, and when he went on chat shows, he seemed like the most level. He seemed like a good guy as well, in comparison to the sort of psychopath Tom Brady. He seemed like, oh, this guy's really good at American football, and he's not a cunt. Mm-hmm. And now that seems to not be the truth anymore.
Cunt factor has increased.
Yeah.
Yeah, significantly. But
maybe we should call the podcast that.
Cunt factor. Yeah. just picture Simon Cowell's mouth flapping. So we.
How would you grade this first outing for us?
I would say it's been high on chemistry, low on preparation.
Do you think we probably went about 8 and 9?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Let's try.
I'm a positive, optimistic guy, David. You know me.
Let's go for 9 and 8 next week.
Great. Cool. Yeah. Perfect. Right. We can probably bring it to a close right there then.
Any final words?
Yeah. I sincerely hope England do well against Wales, although I think Wales is going to beat England.
Oh.
That's my prediction for that game. Do you have a prediction for Scotland's next game?
We've got France, haven't we? Mm-hmm. I'm going to say Scotland are going to win.
Yeah?
Yeah, because no one else would.
All right. We'll come back next week. We'll see if we got it right. Cheers, everybody. Thank you.
I think Ireland will beat Italy. That was fun.